Recently, my wife and I had a cross-cultural experience that taught us about some things we should have done differently. 6 months ago, my company sent me to work at our branch office in Japan. My Japanese co-workers have been friendly and gracious, and last week one of them invited my wife and me to his house for dinner. We were honored to be invited, and the food was delicious. But even though Masayuki and Yukiko, his wife, were most polite and friendly and never gave an indication that anything was wrong, we felt a bit uncomfortable about the evening. I decided to ask my friend Junichi about it. He's lived in both Japan and the United States, so he knows the differences between the two cultures. He gave me a lot of pointers. Now I know what we should and shouldn't have done. The first tip was about taking off our shoes. We knew that you're supposed to take off your shoes when you enter a Japanese home, so we did. We didn't know we were supposed to arrange them so they'd be pointing toward the door when we left, so that we'd be able to put them on without having to turn them around. But this wasn't a big mistake, Junichi said. The second pointer was about gifts. Helen and I knew you're supposed to take a gift to a Japanese home. Masayuki and Yukiko seemed a little shocked, though, when we pulled the present out of a plastic bag and said, "We thought you'd like this CD. It's rock and roll." Junichi chuckled and said, "Well, you should have wrapped the CD. It's okay to bring it in a plastic bag, but the gift itself has to be wrapped. And you mustn't say anything about the gift. Just give it to your hosts. The main problem, though, was the gift itself." "You mean we should have taken something different?" "Yes. A rock and roll CD isn't really an appropriate gift." "Well, what should we have taken?" "Maybe a box of chocolates. Or you could have taken some flowers." After that, I told Junichi about what happened before dinner. Masayuki and Yukiko had invited us to sit down for some tea and snacks. The tea was delicious, but we had trouble eating the raw sushi. I was able to finish mine, but Helen couldn't finish hers. Masayuki and Yukiko seemed a little puzzled. Junichi chuckled again and said, "Well, in Japan, it's considered impolite to leave half-eaten food on a plate." "You mean you've got to eat everything that's offered to you?" I asked. "You don't have to, but if you take something, you must finish it." After we ate, Helen asked Yukiko if she could help her in the kitchen. This is the way we do things back in the United States, but Junichi says you're not to do this in Japan. According to the rules of Japanese culture, visitors aren't allowed to go into the kitchen. The other thing you probably shouldn't do, he says, is praise pictures or ornaments in the house. If you do, your Japanese hosts might feel they have to give the objects to you. Fortunately, we didn't do that. At the end of the evening, Masayuki asked us if we'd like to have another drink. We thought it wouldn't be polite to say no, so we accepted and stayed for another half hour. Finally, we felt that we absolutely had to leave, so that when Masayuki invited us to have an additional drink, I said, "We'd really like to, but it's late. We'd better get going, or we won't be able to get up in the morning." Masayuki and Yukiko seemed relieved. Junichi said, "That's what you should have done in the first place. When a Japanese host invites you to have a drink at the end of the evening, you should refuse gently. Otherwise, you could be there all night. Leaving earlier would have been fine." I asked what he thought we might do to rectify the situation. "Shall we invite them over?" I asked. He said, "Yes, you ought to do that. Just remember all the things I've told you, but don't invite them to an informal Western-style party with a lot of loud music. Just make it a simple dinner for the four of you." Good advice, I thought. What really struck me is how much we all have to learn about other cultures.